Share a few thoughts and some stories, and then we're going to open the mic for some comments or stories or reflections from many of you as well. There's a saying that says it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I would say that if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes 6 children to make a good marriage. Today we celebrate Mom and Dad being happily married for 60 years. A wonderful accomplishment. And having pondered this for some time, I think we need to give a lot of credit to us 6 children for making such a good marriage for Dad and Mom. Here's how I figure it. A good marriage is made up of 3 key things, like 3 points of a triangle: intimacy, communication, and commitment. Let's take these one at a time. First of all, let's talk about intimacy. What could be more intimate for a young couple in love, as Henry and Tina were just 2 years into their marriage, than to give birth to a wonderful bouncing baby on a fine August morning? And then another one the next August. And then a third one the next August following. As Henry and Tina's love and intimacy must have grown in the carefree world of 3 infants under the age of 5. Yet another layer of intimacy was added in the 5th year. Would have been me. And then 5 years later, another. And then to complete the cozy world of Henry and Tina's peaceful, intimate marriage was added yet one more of these adorable, maintenance-free children, giving Dad and Mom all the time in the world to develop the romantic marriage. What could be more intimate than that? And then communication. Communication is crucial for a good marriage, and us six children certainly made enormous contributions to Mom and Dad in that regard. Picture, if you will, a typical supper, with all 8 of us surrounding the food-laden table in true Darwinian fashion, survival of the fittest. Our meal times were so loud, with multiple conversations, yelling for food, and raucous laughter, that Dad once actually secretly recorded a mealtime to play back to us later for our endless entertainment. Once the noise was so loud that Mom, not able to get a word in edgewise, no matter how hard she tried, finally, in exasperation, she slammed her fist onto the table and said, "Be quiet!" Everyone stopped instantly. And in the few seconds of silence that followed as we turned to Mom, in silence, we all looked on in amazement as Mom's fist accidentally pounded down right onto the curve of a fork, spinning it in a perfect arc 2 feet in the air off the table until it clattered back down onto her plate. As you can see, us 6 children made a valuable contribution to Mom's ability to communicate with us, and no doubt helped her and Dad in their marriage immensely. And finally, commitment. Whatever level of commitment Dad and Mom had for each other when their marriage began, once us children started arriving, they had no choice but to band together to deal with us. I have 3 children. Actually, Sharon and I both have 3 children. And I recall the day when our 3rd child, Stephanie, was born, placing Sharon and myself at a numerical disadvantage forever. Imagine then 4, 5, and then 6 arriving, each one placing more demands on Dad and Mom's finances, their housing, physical, emotional, and spiritual energy. Every one of us, therefore, helped drive Dad and Mom desperately into each other's arms and commitment to each other. And so I think we could take some credit for Mom and Dad's marriage. If I was to characterize Henry and Tina's 60 years of marriage and their decades of parenting and family life, I would summarize it down to 2 words: adventure and togetherness. Dad was always after another adventure, and us kids were only too happy to egg him on and join him in any and all of his escapades. Mom, on the other hand, has always valued family togetherness. There's nothing more important to Mom than having her brood around her, cozy and warm inside the house, while the rest of the world outside freezes into oblivion. one story is a perfect illustration of this contrast of adventure and togetherness. In the early 1970s, a British expedition of adventurers decided to try to navigate the horrendous series of 500 kilometers of the rapids on the Congo River as it descends from Kinshasa to the Atlantic Ocean, only using inflatable rafts and two jet-powered boats, which you actually saw a picture of in one of these slides. These rapids had never been conquered before, and they have never been conquered since. In fact, they weren't conquered then either, because the expedition lasted only a week or two before they lost nearly everything on the river and had to abandon their effort. The water was just too bad, too terrible. So we watched them from a hilltop as they set out on the rapids, starting in Kinshasa, and then Dad drove us down along the river to the point where they finally pulled off and beached to camp for the night. As we admired the rafts, somehow Dad managed to get one of the boat pilots to agree to take us out on the river for a 15-minute spin in the rapids. Us kids were ecstatic as we all piled on board. Dad was on adventure and we were going with him. And so Mom did the one only thing she could possibly do. She looked at all of us jumping all together onto the boat, and her togetherness gene kicked in. Well, she said, if you're all going to die together, then I'm coming along to die with you. Well, there's a lot more to Dad and Mom than I've been able to share in a few comments here, but I'll try another 3 words to apply to Dad and Mom today. Those 3 words are generations, blessings, and honor. First of all, generations. Mom and Dad have helped us kids gain a generational perspective on life. We are part of the flow of generations that Psalm speaks of in Psalm 79:13, where it says, we, your people, the sheep of your pasture, will give thanks to you forever. From generation to generation, we will recount your praise. Psalm 90 says, Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. And Psalm 145 says, one generation will commend your works to another. They will tell of your mighty acts. And that's the experience that we have as children of Dad and Mom. Dad and Mom, you have drawn on the wisdom and the strength and the faith of the generations before you, including your parents, and you have anchored us in the flow of these same generations. We have heard the stories of past generations from you as we were children, as we grew up in your home. We've even received some of the names from previous generations. In either our first or middle name, we have names like Mary, John, Henry, and Peter that are all mixed in our names. We understand where we come from because of the way you raised us. And so we also are passing on the wisdom and the stories and the strength and the faith to generations following us. We have learned from your example to recognize God's hand across the generations of our peoples. That is a solid legacy, and you've done well in passing that on to us. Secondly, blessings, recognizing God's blessings. Psalm 115 says, the Lord has remembered us. He will bless us. He will bless the house of Israel. He will bless the house of Aaron. He will bless those who fear the Lord, both small and great. May the Lord give you increase, you and your children. May you be blessed by the Lord who made heaven and earth. That's what we get from Psalm 115. And Dad and Mom, you have taught us to be grateful for God's blessings to us as a family. We have been blessed by your steadfastness and faithfulness as our parents, and by your care for us as children, reading us stories before bedtime, praying while kneeling at our chairs in the living room every evening. I remember when we were small and we would have devotions in the evening, and all of us kids would be kneeling at our chairs while you would be kneeling at your chairs for the evening devotions and the evening prayer, helping us to value the community of God's people gathered for worship every Sunday, encouraging us in our schoolwork and in our friendships and in our families. We know God's blessing on us as your children because of your blessing on us as well. You pass on God's blessings to us, and we have learned to do the same, or are trying to learn to do the same for our children. And in this way, God blesses us just as He's blessed you. And then finally, honor. you are honorable parents. Leviticus 19 says, "Rise in the presence of the aged, show respect for the elderly, and revere your God. I am the Lord." And I know that I speak for all of us kids when I say that today is a unique opportunity for all of us to honor you as dad and mom. Deuteronomy 5 says, "Honor your father and your mother as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live long, and that it may go well with you in the land the Lord your God will give you."
Stop it.
We honor you as our parents, not just because the Ten Commandments tell us to, but because we love you, and we are truly grateful for who you are and what you have meant to us. We're not saying you were perfect. You do know that when you forced me to eat that lumpy porridge in grade 1, you should never have done that. Because ever since, I've had to mash my porridge up to make it nice and smooth and creamy so I didn't have to eat those lumps. But of course, I don't remember those kinds of things, and I would never mention them to you, or for sure not in public. So we're not saying you were perfect, but you have lived out the grace and the mercy and the love of God in your lives. We honor God, and we honor you because of that. Psalm 92, I'll just close with that, says, "The righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon, planted in the house of the Lord. They will flourish in the courts of our God. They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming, 'The Lord is upright, He is my rock, and there is no wickedness in Him.'" So thank you for your blessings, for teaching us to be anchored in the generations of God's people, and we are delighted to honor you today in this gathering and with our memories and our thoughts and our prayers with you. I'm going to ask for my brothers and sisters to come up and just share whatever it is that you have thought of, so we can all come up together and be good. I would say we should go all this together. There you go. Thank you. So we'll start with Mary.
Sit down for a minute.
Exactly right.
No, I can't do this.
Do I look like Mary?
You do.
My name is not Mary. Anytime I refer to I, it's not me, it's Mary. Yeah, one piece of paper here, please. Okay. Being a mom and now a nana, I'm not a nana and I'm not a mom. Anyway, I realize what a trip that must have been for mom and dad to take all of their kids and pack up and move to Africa. In those early years in Congo, not everything was available. So mom and dad packed several years worth of clothes, shoes, birthday and Christmas gifts for all of us kids, plus canned foods. Mom and dad made all of our family outings special, whether it was a family picnic, a birthday party, sleepover on the Sadie roof, or a snowless Christmas. They're all special times. I'm happy to say that one Christmas even, though there was no Santa Claus to tell my wish list to, I did get a diary, never had a diary in my life, and a razor. Which she had begged for. One of my favorite memories of mom is that she sewed a lot of our clothes. She even sewed my wedding dress. Hers, not mine. And my veil. Hers, not mine. Dad, you always arrange for extra trips through Europe or on our way to or from Canada. I love you both so much, and I love that I have been here for 58 years of your 60 years together.
Yeah.
Thanks, Seymour. You, not her.
That's right.
As I was reflecting on Mom and Dad's marriage,
a lot of the thoughts that came to my mind actually were the same as Rudy, and he's expressed them quite well. Especially the family devotions, that's something that lives on in my memory, and we've tried to carry that on with our family, and we definitely appreciate the fact that Mom and Dad have made God a priority in their lives and passed it on to us kids. There is one thing though that that really didn't get into much detail on, and that is that 6 kids. Mom and Dad, I guess you probably wonder how missionaries train their kids about sex education and how babies are made. And I'll tell you how that works in a missionary family, for those of you who have that to come so. I guess it was about the time that Mom was pregnant with Joel, and I started getting curious about like how do these things happen, and so I could sense that Mom and Dad were not comfortable with talking about this. So finally I approached Mom and I said, Mom, how are babies made? And I could tell she was visibly uncomfortable. And she kind of looked and said something cryptic about a man and a woman, and then some other kind of cryptic comments. And I walked away being pretty sure that it had to do with holding hands. And so after I got married, I was married for about a year, and Jan finally said, how come all we ever do is hold hands? And I said, well, I thought you wanted to have kids. And I see that Mom and Dad actually still hold hands, so there may be more on the way. But all kidding aside, I actually got my education from David Stevenson, the missionary boy next door. Because his Mom and Dad gave him all the details, along with an illustrated book. And we spent many afternoons in the Sadie warehouse on top of cartons of paper, looking through the book. And anyway, so I was in good shape by the time I got married. But Mom and Dad, we really appreciate you and everything you've done for us over the years, all the adventures you've given us, and a good and stable home, a good place to come home to. We still come home once a year when we can, and it's always good being here. And yeah, we love you lots. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got nothing but really good memories of growing up. Like you saw in the pictures, we were always doing adventures. We always had different things that we would do. And there was a couple of pictures in the slideshow as well. And this is something I really remember. It was a period of time when us guys, on our birthdays, Dad would take us camping somewhere so we could invite our friends. And we'd all load up in a 5-ton truck and just kind of drive off kind of wherever. And I think one of our favorite places was Green Lake. So we would go, right? So we'd go north of the airport and just kind of drive until, I don't know what the indication was, but somewhere out in the distant hills is kind of where we would go. And we would just turn the truck off the road and kind of drive through the fields and disappear over the yonder hill and end up at this lake. And of course, as soon as we got off the road, we would all be allowed to crawl on top of the truck on the box, and we'd all be sitting up there, and down we'd just drive along. It was just so cool. So lots of good memories like that. The river that we lived close by had crocs, and we knew that, and we swam there, and we knew that. And we would go down to the river and kind of look around. You guys seen the crocs? Nope. Okay, in we'd go. But you know, do you remember that one dry season? The river was exceptionally low.
Yeah.
And a big mammoth croc had been caught in one of these pools. So we all went down there one Sunday afternoon, I think it was.
Yep.
and watching this big, huge croc. And it was where we swam all the time. And one of our buddies got eaten by the croc, and we would still swim down. I mean, what were we thinking? Anyways, the dad was there, he was swimming too. So, okay, Dad, are there any crocs? No, okay, let's go. But you know, I just have tons and tons of just phenomenal memories. And most of my memories are actually of Africa. I mean, I do have some memories of here, but most of the memories would be Africa. So, Mom and Dad, thanks for all the experiences and all that stuff. I know Mom was probably more worried than anything. A lot of stuff. Yeah, she stayed home and prayed while we went out. That was good. But I do also remember the whole, the importance of family devotions. Every morning we would have devotions and we would pray, and evenings often as well. And that just sticks in my mind as something that was very important then, and it's something important to me now. And thank you so much for all that you guys have imparted to us, spiritually especially. And we love you, and just so glad that we can be here.
Thank you.
What's with these women?
You gotta explain that you're not here.
I guess I'll have to explain the same thing to you, or do you? It's not me.
I is you and you is here.
Congratulations, Mom and Dad, on your 60th anniversary. I feel blessed to have parents like you who love God and each other and have been wonderful parents and grandparents. I have so many good memories of our growing up years. In Zaire and Canada, both of you are wonderful parents who taught us to love God and each other. There's a theme going on. You taught us the value of honest hard work, but also you knew how to have fun and how to make wonderful experiences for us. It didn't matter if we were out in the bush in Africa or by the woods and creek by our home in Virgin. Mom would often pack a picnic and Dad would take us on some fun adventure. We had many fun family times. The ones that stand out most in my mind were the trips to Vista and Rwanda by the Zaire coast. The long trip down there, the roadside picnics in the mission house by the beach, and the fun times we had hunting for shells at low tide. I remember the one time at the beach in Angola when you bought a large watermelon for lunch, and that was a rare treat. And Dad buried it in the sand to keep it cool. By the time we were ready to eat, the tides had changed things and we couldn't find the buried watermelon. Some Portuguese military guys saw us digging and joined in the fun. And they located the watermelon and they got to share the cool watermelon with us. Rick and I also had the privilege of visiting you in Kananga. We had great fun taking that backcountry trip with you. You guys in the truck and Rick and I on motorbikes. Rick and I and Dennis Schmidt, also on a bike, got to the Mission Lake house first and quickly cleaned up the dead bats in the house before you got there, Mom. I remember the fun of helping you in the kitchen, Mom. Well, it wasn't really help, but it was fun for me. Eating cookie dough and watching you make delicious food. Looking into the large metal barrels of food from Canada was a treat. We sometimes got Kool-Aid or saltine crackers as a treat. Dad, I will always remember the fun I had putting my kittens in the buggy and going downstairs at Leco to visit you while you were working. You never made me feel like I was in the way and let me sit by your desk and collect some pieces of paper from the printing area. I was in awe of how big the place was with all the noisy printing machines. We had a wonderful childhood, and now our children also love coming to visit your place because of how cozy and fun it is. I love you, Mom and Dad. Thank you for being a wonderful example to me of what a loving marriage and family life should look like. May God continue to bless you both and keep you. Love, Ruth.
Thank you.
Being, like Rudy said, being the last of 6 kids, I'd like to think that by the time I came along, Mom and Dad made all the mistakes, raised me perfectly, and there was no issues after that. But I'm actually kidding. But having said that, I've had the opportunity in my life to, as an adult now, to still have Dad and Mom part of my daily life. And I do have a lot of really good memories. They're not quite as eloquent as my siblings. But I do know that with all the things that Dad and Mom, Dad's always been an adventurer, like Rudy was saying, and every time we'd go on a trip or do something that was a little bit dangerous, for whatever reason, going to the edge of a cliff and boat, whatever, Mom, you usually did pray, but I recall that you came along on a lot of those trips as well, because I think your theory was if we were going to die, you wanted to die with us. So I do recall a lot of those trips. And like Ruth, I remember going to Dad's office many times at all the places that he worked, and he always had a drawer. And it didn't take long to find it for us kids at least, but he always had a drawer where he would have his, cookies and treats, and he still does have a drawer in his office in Virgil where he still has cookies and treats that you know where it is. And a couple of other little interesting things I do. And we still talk about this, but I remember when I was growing up, I would always know when we were, even if I wasn't aware prior, if I was a little kid and if I knew, if Mom was wearing a certain dress and it was a polka dot dress, and if there was a yellow tablecloth and she was making Swiss steak, I knew we were going to have visitors that night. And that was especially true at some of our other, at most on some of those homes. I just had vivid memories of every time we had visitors, Mom wore the same dress, we had the same tablecloth, and she always made Swiss steak. That may or may not be true, but that's my memory. I remember as well, Dad, the science project that you helped me when I was in our first year back from Zaire, and with the chickens, hatching all the chickens, and I won first place at the Virgil Fair. And I know a lot of people would, or a lot of my counterpart, or my friends when I was a kid, here more recently would say, if you were a missionary kid, did you feel like you were disadvantaged at all? And I really didn't.
I can be Joel. As long as I'm not married.
No, I do feel like Dad and Mom always were, and still are, a very, precious part of our life, and they've always.
Been there for us.
Hi.
Are you kidding?
It's fine, she's fine. I'm probably okay now. Welcome to the family, this is what we're like. Anyways, at this point in my life, I just want to say I'm really honored and proud as an adult to be able to share my life with Dad and Mom on a daily basis. As most of you know, we live together and that works beautifully, and I cherish their friendship, and thank you and have a very
Happy